everybody's in the correct room.
Test.
This is Global Digital Cooperation from Ambition to Country Level.
Test.
Which channel?
2. Test. Yeah.
Channel 4.
Channel 4.
Test.
4. Could we also have the share screen if you don't mind? Hi, everyone. I think we'll give it another 1 minute and we'll start.
This is it's called Remarkable, and it's an excellent tool. You can write. No, it's not responsive in terms of turning pages, but in terms of writing. Excellent. This is paper. Yeah, I know it'll because it's e-paper. It will take a little while. No, I'm not the one. Maybe at the
Hi, while we're waiting, I think we can start now. But I'm going to start off by actually explaining a little bit of what we're going to do today. We're going to do it a little bit more interactively, where we'll ask you, the audience members, both online and in the room, to actually take a
You have to-
survey that we're putting online.
You have to put the mic in front of your mouth.
I'm waving the microphone a little bit too much, so it's not catching my voice. So one more time, welcome everybody to this open forum on global digital cooperation, from global ambition to country level action. And this is brought to you by the United Nations Development Programme, the International Telecommunications Union, the UN DESA, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Southern Voice, as well as the Internet Society. So thank you so much for being here today. We're going to start off with an interactive segment where we're really looking forward to the views of the participants here in the room as well as online. And so we start off with a little bit of a quiz, or survey more likely. If I could have the share screen. We're working on this. Okay, here we go. And so this is for the audience members, both here in the room as well as online as well. You can respond to 2 questions on Slido, where basically you scan the QR code and you vote. And here we're asking the first question, which is, which GDC objective is most important for your work on global digital cooperation? Again, these are the objectives of the Global Digital Compact. And we would like for you, whoops, if we can go back. Yeah, there we go. So here we have the objectives of the Global Digital Compact, and we would like for you to answer the question about which objective is most important for your work on global digital cooperation. If we could take down the accessibility shortcut. We're back again. So for those who couldn't scan the QR code, the results update live. So if everybody could participate by scanning the QR code and answering the survey question. Hi, can I have the technicians try it again? Is it possible to bring down? Oh, there's just no way to turn it off. Oh, no.
Sorry, they told me
No problem.
7 is the one. They told me the wrong room. Sorry.
Level. And I know everybody likes to give long UN paragraphs, but here we're really asking for 1-2 words. So we can show them on the screen. Scan the QR code and give us 1-2 words. Participants, panelists as well. I think you're required to take part. I especially like the stop talking suggestion. I think that has to be followed by stop talking and take action.
I confess that was me.
Nice.
All right. Couple more moments for anybody else. Those online as well. And that's interesting. So we see a number of suggestions on the screen: benefit sharing, ensure alignments, strategy, strong partnerships. But capacity building seems to be the #1 response, as you can tell by the boldness of the text. Cooperation, stakeholders, infrastructure, participation, more actions, project. So, keeping these in mind, I'll ask the panelists to just turn around very quickly, have a look at what the audience has responded as the most important actions, and then to bear that in mind as they're answering the questions, so that we can, as suggested by one of the responses, not just talk, but actually take some actual action at the country level. Okay. Oh, and ensure alignment. There was a last-minute contender up there. Okay. So, having had that reflection from our participants, we're going to turn to our panelists now and really have their views on how you turn global digital cooperation, the objectives of the GDC, into what we really need, which is implementation at the country level. And from the perspective of the United Nations Development Program, where I come from as the head of partnerships and engagement, that's particularly important because we're present in 170 countries and territories around the world, and we really want to see where global discussions land in impact, particularly at the country level. And so that's what we're really hoping today's conversation with all of you and with our distinguished panelists will bring some insights and highlights and prioritization to these types of efforts. So with that, I'm going to turn to our distinguished panelists. I'm going to introduce them all first, and then I'm going to ask them questions all in turn, one after another. So today we have with us Miss Cynthia Lesufi, Minister Counsel of the South African Mission to the United Nations in Geneva and other international organizations. We have Ms. Gitanjali Shah, Strategy and Policy Coordinator of the International Telecommunications Union. We have Mr. Robert Opp, Chief Digital Officer of the UNDP. We have Mr. Olaf Kolkman, Principal of Internet Technology, Policy and Advocacy from the Internet Society, as well as Mr. Dennis Souza from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, sitting for Mr. Zhuang Zhu, who was unable to make it at the very last minute. So our distinguished panelists will answer a first round of questions, after which we'll open up to conversation with the audience. And I really encourage participants, both online as well as in the room, to ask our panel any questions that they might have, really about having this conversation that we so urgently need about turning Global Digital Compact into real concrete action. So we're going to start with the first round of questions, and the first question actually goes to Robert Opp, Chief Digital Officer of the UNDP. Rob, UNDP supports digital programming in more than 120 countries around the world, as I mentioned. What are some of the key challenges and needs that countries face in their digital transformation? How does the GDC speak to some of these needs and opportunities, and how does it connect with other ongoing processes, for instance, the WSIS plus 20 review?
Well, that's 3 questions in one. But
A chance to ask as many things as possible.
okay. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks to those of you who have come to this discussion. In terms of answering the question, UNDP, as Yuping just said, has a footprint across 170 countries, and we have digital programs in most of those countries. And the kinds of things that we hear in terms of requests for support fall into a few big categories. One of the categories is around requests for support in strategy building, policies, roadmaps in terms of how to roll out digital transformation at a societal level. So we have been responding to those requests by engaging in dialogues around digital readiness assessment and things like that to understand where countries are and where they want to be. Second big category is around sort of what are the kinds of technologies I should put in place to improve different digital public services and really connect people, close the digital divide in terms of both the connectivity side, but as well as the kind of services available. Third category is around capacity building, so that's interesting that it came up on the screen. Very frequently, everyone is asking for more capacity across the board, whether that be in government or in society at large around innovation ecosystems as well. Everyone's looking for more digital capacity. And then fourthly, the more recent requests that we have, which is part of the kind of wave of discussion around AI, is how do I build my AI ecosystem? And so it involves all of those other 3 things I mentioned, but there's a very specific request line around artificial intelligence and how I can make it work for me and my country. So those are the kinds of things that we hear. In terms of the question, your second question was on how does it relate to the GDC, and the good news is that the Global Digital Compact actually covers all of those themes in one way or another. In the technology space, there's mentioned the first time an intergovernmental agreement has mentioned digital public infrastructure, and that's something as an approach that we work a lot with in countries. There's also quite a few mentions in the Global Digital Compact on capacity building, and of course artificial intelligence as well, including the need for capacity for AI. So the GDC, I think, as an overarching umbrella, is a good step forward in terms of acknowledging some of the things that are facing us and facing countries around the world today. And then in terms of the WSIS plus 20, I think it's an important thing to have a signal from the GDC to where WSIS needs to go. So looking forward, we need to, in WSIS plus 20, update the action lines, update the basis on which we're going to work for the next period that we decide on, and take those signals that are coming out of the GDC and, as I mentioned, out of countries, and ensure that they are embedded in WSIS plus 20. So I'll leave it there, you pick.
Much, Rob. And may I also apologize because I failed to see that none of our panelists has actually joined us online. Margarita, are you there? Could I also ask that she be upgraded to panelists as well, to the technicians in the room? Margarita Gomez is the executive director of Southern Voice, one of the co-organizers of this event. I'm just checking to see whether she's been upgraded online. While we are waiting for that to happen, perhaps I can turn the next question to Cynthia. Cynthia, the question that I have for you is, what opportunities does the GDC offer for supporting inclusive digital transformations, particularly at the country level?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join this important panel, for sitting as a country, for sitting with the UN agencies to talk about this important topic. And I also want to thank all of you for joining this session. It's quite an honor for South Africa to join this. Yuping, in terms of the question, let me start first by stating that actually the Global Digital Compact, in its form, it offers a variety of opportunities to support digital transformation in countries from where we are sitting. And it also, structured in such a way that it empowers countries by focusing on key priorities that drive inclusive digital transformation. For instance, the Global Digital Compact, it promotes adopting inclusive digital policies for universal and affordable internet access, particularly in rural and underserved areas. And coming from South Africa and from the region where the issue of connectivity is a problem, we believe the GDC, it is structured in such a way that it starts to address this. And the other thing that it focuses on for countries, what it does is that it fosters global partnerships to provide affordable devices and services and reduce the barriers for low-income population. And again, this talks to the region that I come from, which is Africa. But the other important thing which Rob spoke to is the issue of skills capacity building. And where we are sitting, we actually want to emphasize the fact that the GDC in its current form, it does touches on issues of skills capacity building issues. And again, we're looking at this in a way that our view is that it enables marginalized groups to use the digital tools effectively, but also it also allows countries to access to train their workforces in emerging technologies such as AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, and also it promotes inclusive digital economies. The other thing that we have also noted as South Africa is that the GDC in its current form, it also encourages the public-private partnership, which from where we are sitting, it strengthens the collaboration among government, the private sector, NGOs, and international organizations on inclusive digital initiatives. And we also believe that through this, what it does, it also helps countries to leverage resources and expertise for infrastructure development and digital transformation project. But also, the other thing that we have also identified that we believe GDC is talking to is to mandate that countries assess their progress by identifying the gaps in as far as digital transformation is concerned, and that where we are sitting, it assists countries to take decisive action to enhance their digital transformation journeys. And the other thing that is also important is that the GDC also, from where we are sitting, urge countries to learn from global success stories and adopt proven strategies to accelerate digital inclusion initiatives. I think I should stop at that. Thank you.
I think we could have listened to Cynthia for a lot longer because I think her answer was extremely comprehensive and really touched on a lot of these elements that already were reflected by the participants and you, the audience, as to the important parts of the GDC that we really need to pick up on. So, Cynthia, thank you so much for really a great answer to that. I think it's also particularly important given that South Africa is actually taking on the presidency of the G20 next year. And so that perspective of leading from the global South and the global majority is particularly important. So the next question we have is for Olaf. Olaf, so the question for you is that the Internet Society works to ensure that the Internet is open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy. How does the GDC contribute to your mission? And what do you think the role of stakeholders, particularly the technical community, should be in realizing the ambition of the GDC?
Yeah, good question. The question is essentially what can the GDC do for you? But I'd like to turn that around. What can we do for the GDC? I see the GDC as a joint vision where we are asked to work to a common goal. But I'm also a strong believer in the bottom-up fashion and the bottom-up nature of partnerships, of developing solutions that locally work, that are locally tailored, that bring together the people for their local needs. And while the GDC points something on the radar, I strongly believe that you need to develop these partnerships in a bottom-up nature. And of course, when you do that, you need to have local stakeholders at the table, the people who understand the technology, that can bridge that to the people who understand, say, the rights in a locality, that understand the needs in a locality, and that can also find the funding in that locality. So when we do that in practice as the Internet Society, for instance, when we are connecting communities. And when we're connecting communities, we look, generally we are part of the funding structures for those, but not always. And we seek technologists that can build the technologies. We tie them to the local communities to make sure that we know what the requirements are, but we also talk, say, to the municipalities to get right of way to a tower that might be somewhere on which an antenna can be mounted. And those are the tiny examples of places where people get together and do stuff. So I think that once we have those experiences locally at municipal level, we can share them at national level to exchange experiences. And I believe that is the model of the IGF, where we have all the regional and national IGFs, where people come together and share experiences in their fora on how did you come to a solution. And that type of norm entrepreneurship, the norm and technical entrepreneurship, I believe creates solutions that are more sustainable than anything that we can invest and invent top down. And to me, that is where the IGF, of course, plays a humongous role. And I'm happy to see that that role is recognized in the GDC concept. And the GDC defines a number of objectives that keep the eye on the ball, of course. One of them is, of course, the connectivity of all humans to the internet. We still have 2.8 million to go, mostly in the global south, as you heard the Saudi minister say during the plenary. It's a high effort, and that's where we as Internet Society are of course focusing our work. So I would say the GDC helps us think globally, but the action needs to be local. Thank you.
That is a great tagline. Think global with the GDC, but really the action has to be local. And I think that's something that's been emphasized in quite a lot of the comments as well. And I think that's a really good way to segue into the question to Margarita. Margarita, Southern Voice is a network of currently 70 think tanks in the Global South working to accelerate SDG progress. So really reflecting on this connection to what Olaf has just said about acting local, what are you hearing across your members about priorities for implementing the Global Digital Compact? And where is there the most opportunity at the country level, the local level?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you everybody that is joining online and in person there. So as you mentioned, so we are a network of 70 think tanks in 35 countries of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and we work to close the gap between evidence and action. We also connect researchers, practitioners, and decision makers to work together and to enhance South-South cooperation, South-North collaborations, to rebalance knowledge asymmetry in global debates and sustainable development. So always we are having this conversation. How can we connect? Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but it seems like there's some difficulty with her sound. Margarita, if you just hold on a minute. Because I hear a lot of buzzing in her sound quality, and we're not really hearing her message clearly. So maybe could we have a little bit more of a clearer fix on her sound? The online panelist? Okay, they're saying that they can't really control it and it's coming from something else.
And it's being transcribed here.
Okay. Margarita, I think if you could just continue, and we apologize for that, and we can read the transcription here so we can actually follow along with your important points. So Margarita, can I ask you to continue? Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we can't hear her now. Yes. Okay, go ahead, Margarita.
It's only being transcribed.
Is important for our members and for the countries where they are based. The second priority that we have identified is the inclusion of women and girls. So what we see is that the gap is getting bigger in terms of having more women and having more girls connecting and being part of the digital transformation. When we talk about the Global Digital Compact, we see that there is an important effort to connect these priorities that are coming from the Global South with this global framework. Now, we have seen that they have put in the center some of these digital device that exist in the different topics that and priorities of the GDC. Just maybe to think a little more what we can do at the local level, that is where countries and not municipalities, as Olaf was saying, but also states and national governments can have more advantage and can work more on that. So the first one, in terms of closing and to tackling the digital divides, are reducing the barriers of meaningful use of digital use, the digital literacy. So we know that in many countries in the global south, there is a gap already of literacy. And when we talk about digital literacy, this is becoming even bigger. So we think that this is something that governments at the national level can do better because they know the context. They have also the right partners to do this. The inclusion of women and girls, that's another issue that we've seen that is important, that local governments can have more advantage. And then also the participation and the inclusion of marginalized groups in the design of the technology, to be part of this revolution that is happening. And maybe just my final point is that these are things that local governments can do better, but there are other things that are needed also to happen at the global level in order to make these changes happen. And I just want to mention two of them that we think that is important. One is having a little more of support of the global entities in terms of infrastructure, in terms of really sharing good practices, and also having more regulation and more inclusive governance, that we think that this is something that is needed to happen at the global level. And in order to really move the needle in this topic, we need to collaborate in both levels. One that is the local level, and then the actions that we need to take at the global level. Thank you so much. And I hope that the sounds wasn't too terrible.
No, it was much better towards the end, Margarita. And thank you so much again for your patience on that. And so with Margarita's comment that we should also look to the global level, we're turning the conversation back here in the room to reflections from DESA as well as ITU, two of the global UN entities working on the global stage. And so the next question goes to Dennis from DESA. How does the GDC help accelerate SDG progress? And that's something that DESA has really been looking at, tracking and measuring the progress that's been made on the SDGs. And what has DESA seen in terms of the biggest needs and opportunities in this space?
Thank you, Yuping. And thank you also for inviting DESA to this panel. I am representing Mr. Zhuang Zhu, Director of Division for Public Institutions, as you mentioned. The GDC highlights several areas critical for country-level implementation, many of which align with our work at DESA. Due to time constraints, I will focus on our contribution related to WSIS and the WSIS Plus UN overall review. So as many of you know, paragraph 68 of the GDC emphasizes building on WSIS processes and forums, such as the IGF and its national and regional initiatives, and the WSIS forum to advance the GDC implementation. And it also looks forward to WSIS Plus 20 review in 2025, where UNDESA will serve as the secretariat. UNDESA is responsible for 3 WSIS action lines. WSIS action line C1, promoting ICT for development, C7, e-government, and C11, international and regional cooperation. Related to WSIS action line C1, GDC makes many references to the role of ICTs for SDGs, such as importance of data governance, AI. At UNDESA, with our regular program for technical cooperation, we support capacity building initiatives to advance sustainable development in developing countries. This program provides technical assistance, policy advice, and knowledge sharing platforms to enhance governance, digital transformation, and institutional capacities. One of the key focus is promoting ICTs as enablers of sustainable development by improving digital governance, fostering inclusivity, and building institutional readiness to leverage digital tools and technologies. We have many projects, same like UNDP, in many countries. Related to WSIS action line C7, e-government, paragraph 13E of the GDC commits to prioritizing digital competencies for public officials and institutions, enabling the development and implementation of inclusive, secure, and user-centered digital services. So the United Nations e-government survey, which looks at e-government development of 193 countries, And starting from 2018, we also went local. We started looking at the most populous city in each country. However, we have received many questions about why we cannot expand to several cities in a single country. So we are also creating partnerships with entities, either government or non-government, to advance this work into several cities in a single country. South Africa is one of the countries that we did this study. So we share our UN government survey methodology and we look at the local level. So this work is also growing extensively in the recent years. There are many countries that we are going at the local, and I fully agree with Olaf's comments on that. And the last WSIS action line C11 is the partnerships. And again, paragraph 28 of the GDC acknowledged the IGF as the primary multi-stakeholder platform for internet governance. And while paragraph 29b commits to supporting the IGF by increasing diverse participation from developing countries. As you see here, we are also working on that already, bringing IGF to this region for the first time. UNDESA is the institutional home to the IGF, and also bringing Global South and national and local and youth IGFs. So with that, we already also work on the GDC principles. So I just want to conclude saying that our work aligns closely with the GDC principles, and we will continue to integrate its commitments into our efforts.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And actually, on that particular note, that the UN agencies are really looking to see how we can drive forward implementation of the GDC through our existing work and these ongoing programs that are really reaching country level, local level, as Dennis has explained. That's a good way to actually go to our last panelist, Ms. Gitanjali Shah, who also many of you would actually know is known affectionately in some places as Miss WSIS because of her very strong role and leadership in the process itself. And really reflecting again on that, the role of the IGF, the role of the WSIS in implementation of the GDC. Gitanjali, can you speak to what ITU sees as the priorities in delivering the GDC vision at the country level and the opportunity that the WSIS Plus 20 review that will be happening next year in the General Assembly has to drive progress towards these key goals?
Thank you, Yuping. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for organizing this very multi-stakeholder panel where we heard different voices. And to complement what Dennis and Rob said, that through the WSIS action lines, the WSIS action lines provide a very sound framework of and captures the whole gamut of digital technologies, right from cybersecurity to ICT infrastructure to, and they have been evolving to accommodate new and emerging technologies. So it's a beautiful framework, and it's really the UN in action, because different UN agencies based on their respective mandates are implementing the different action lines. So WHO has e-health, UNEP does e-environment, ITU and UNDP do capacity building. So it's really a beautiful one UN in action framework. So, and as you can see, we are all here at the IGF. So the IGF and the WSIS Forum are perhaps the best examples of, how multi-stakeholders are bringing stories from the ground to the global level, and sharing knowledge and sharing information on how digital cooperation really happens with different stakeholders. So ITU, as the UN agency for digital technologies, our existing mandates and actions are directly aligned with the objectives, principles, and commitments of the GDC. ITU is already actively supporting member states and its sector members in implementing the GDC. So during our ITU governing body meetings, including the Council Working Group on WSIS and SDGs, that Cynthia is the chair of, we have actually, identified the key actions that ITU should be taking, an ITU action plan, and mapping it with the existing WSIS frameworks and the 2030 agenda. Of course, we must not forget the global development goals that we are all aspiring to achieve. Digital has such a key role in achieving those sustainable development goals. So at the ITU, internally, we would have an internal ITU GDC implementation plan. And we are working with the Geneva-based UN agencies to also come up with, an action plan, a Geneva action plan. We are currently calling it the Geneva Digital Kitchen. We meet very often to kind of brainstorm and to explore, what we could contribute to New York and to the implementation of the GDC as the UN in Geneva as well. So recently, many of you attended the WTSA, the World Telecommunication Standardization Assembly, where, of course, ITU member states and memberships prioritize AI standards, AI governance to promote responsive, inclusive, and impactful AI for sustainable development. Now, at the country level as well, ITU has several country offices, area offices, regional offices, where we are working with important partners like the UNDP on capacity building programs, on policy guidance, and main priority being to address the digital divide by ensuring universal connectivity. That's the main thing that ITU strives to achieve, especially for marginalized and underserved communities. Initiatives like the GIGA, where we are connecting schools with UNICEF, Partner to Connect, the DPI initiative, again with the UNDP, Equals Global Partnership to close the gender digital divide. These are all important initiatives that are already contributing to several aspects of the GDC. At the same time, cybersecurity is a very crucial issue for the ITU. Fostering an open, safe, secure digital environment is, of course, a priority. It's covered under Action Line C5, those of you who follow the WSIS framework, but it's always, and WSIS Plus 20 obviously provides us with an opportunity to ensure that all of this is strengthened, especially at the grassroots level. Of course, ITU's ongoing efforts with the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights, OHCHR, and other stakeholders are advancing these objectives through developing relevant standards and guidelines to protect privacy, security, and freedom of expression. So, Yuping, just to conclude that WSIS Plus 20 review provides us with this opportunity to ensure that this milestone that GDC has provided during the WSIS Plus 20 process is taken into consideration, and we build on this to provide a future of WSIS beyond 2025. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali. And then, so before I go to our external stakeholders, I'm going to ask Robert Opp to round up the UN family considerations and sort of reflections as to the work that the UN agency is doing in this area, and ask you how UNDP is addressing some of the needs and opportunities that you had spoken about, that have been reflected from our audience participation, and that you've heard from some of the other panelists. So what are the insights that you have heard from the various countries that UNDP works in, and what do you see as, again, the most urgent priorities in this space?
Yeah, so I think, so all the panelists have mentioned different aspects of it. There's, I mentioned before that we are getting signals from countries in these sort of different areas, policies and strategies, technology space, and capacity building, as well as AI. So in the policy and strategy space, we have done digital readiness assessments in 53 countries. That is a multi-stakeholder process itself, where it is a combination of government, private sector, civil society, and other actors feed into the sort of perceptions around what is the strengths and weaknesses of particular contexts or particular digital ecosystems. We've also started doing AI readiness assessments, which respond to that signal that we're getting from countries on how can we embrace AI and embrace the benefits. And that is something that we do jointly with UNESCO as well. On the technology side, the digital public infrastructure work, you just mentioned it, Gitanjali. We're working in about 25 countries with digital public infrastructure and trying to understand how to put people at the center of that. And to that end, we have just recently also launched together with the UN Technology Envoy's Office, a set of DPI safeguards. That is a set of best practices that accompany the implementation of digital public infrastructure in a way that puts people and their rights at the center. And so that was launched recently at the UN General Assembly this year and is now something that is available and we're working to implement across countries around the world. And then the capacity building space is a kind of a tapestry at the moment. We do work with ITU on a number of capacity building efforts. There's also, I think, a fairly strong role for private sector and civil society when it comes to capacity building. And so, for example, in Kenya, we are starting a collaboration with the government of Kenya, Microsoft, and Huawei on digital capacity building for civil servants. So there's a lot of work going on out there across all of these areas. Your second question was on insights. And I would say, you know, one of the bigger insights, and I hear it coming out of the panel here, these cannot just be top-down things. These have to be also bottom-up, and you have to take into account signals from people, you have to involve people, you have to be on the ground, you have to be local. You really need to, I think, in order to get a set of actions that work for everybody and are inclusive, you really need to have those voices included. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And in our work with, because UNDP works with community level and city level and national governments, sometimes it is our role to remind those government authorities that we need to have those voices in the room as well. So I'll leave it there.
And on that note of voices in the room, I'm turning again back to Margarita from Southern Voice to really reflect on that question of voices in the room. And Margarita, my question for you is, where do you see the opportunities, catalytic opportunities for GDC implementation? Have you really seen this, for instance, from your research work with the Global South? And how does Southern Voice plan to continue working with its network and wider partners in this?
Thank you so much, and great conversation, great points that my colleagues has already shared too. I'm going to highlight three catalytics or opportunities that we see in the Global South, and the first one has already been highlighted by some of my colleagues there. That is the potential of partnerships. And what we see is, like, at the national level, there is the potential of bringing to the conversation other partners and to have more synergies and collaborations. So we need the government, we need private sector also engaging in these conversations. And there is one part that we see from the Global South when we talk about partnerships is how can we learn from what other countries in the Global South are doing in terms of using technology, giving access, innovation that can be adapted, and that can be also an inspiration for other countries in the Global South. So that will be one, the potential of these partnerships, bringing others to the conversation. The second one, and this is something that we were discussing too, if we needed to do one thing as a government and as a different actors collaborating in this, is maybe as to put in the center the inclusion and also the reduction of these digital divides that exist, is maybe guaranteeing or trying to assure that we can have access in public spaces. We can give access in public spaces to as many citizens that is possible in these countries. And this is an effort, again, a collective effort that needs to happen to give access in schools, public service. And we have already some examples that happen in these terms. So we have the GIGA initiative that has been trying to connect schools, hospitals, and different public areas in order to guarantee this access, mainly to the ones that has less access and that we might be leaving behind. And that's the second opportunity that we see. And the third one is also was already mentioned, that is, how can we enhance local innovations and also engage local communities to the design, development of these technologies that we are using. Even there are already some efforts that we have seen of people designing artificial intelligence logarithms, bringing communities and local knowledge. That is also very important. And in terms of what we are doing, so one of our core work is to connect the local agendas and the local efforts that is happening in different countries to the global agenda. And that is something that we are working with our members to identify these local needs in order to connect also with the global debates. And as a Southern Voice, we are engaging in different spaces in this agenda to bring and to put in at the center the needs, the priorities, and the agenda that is important in these topics from the Global South in order to connect with these global debates. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Margarita. And actually, those keywords that you highlighted, partnership, inclusion, local innovation, and knowledge, really speak to what Olaf actually had mentioned in his earlier intervention that I will ask him now to elaborate a little bit more on. And how does Internet Society intend to continue your important work in building these types of partnerships, fostering this inclusion, and really bringing to bear the local innovation and knowledge, perhaps from internet technical experts, policymakers, and having these types of coalitions among developing countries so that we can elevate, as Margarita says, these perspectives?
How do we do that? Well, actually by doing it. And that's a silly answer.
That's
of
a
course.
response to stop talking, more action.
Sort of, yeah. No, we do this in many ways, and of course we have a network of chapters throughout the world. If you talk about the interaction on local level between policymakers and perhaps technologies and civil society people, usually we find those people back in our local chapters. There are 140 of them. We have over 100,000 members globally, and they are usually in a position to, if not being specialists themselves, link people up with specialists. We try to find partnerships through our grant-making program that provides chapters, but also other individuals that want to deploy initiatives about building networks to cyber capacity. People, being educated in digital skills, we fund that. Inaudible audio.
Oh no, technical difficulties.
Shall we switch microphone for a while?
Can you read? I don't. Anybody else's mic? Can I ask the technicians to have a look at that?
Am I audible in the room? Yeah. Okay.
In the room, yes, but the transcription does not seem to be working.
Am I audible online? Margarita, can you raise your thumb if you can hear me? It looks like Margarita cannot hear me.
Yes, I think it's just that online it does not seem to be translating. Can anybody online hear us?
If she doesn't raise her thumb, she cannot.
Yeah, she can't. Is it possible to check the connection to online? We're trying to speak and it doesn't seem to be translating online. Is there any way to up the sound?
I'm going to just say a few words and continue speaking about completely nothing. This is a nice building with beautiful chandeliers. One chandelier costs more than my house. The electricity bill of all the chandeliers probably less than my bedroom. There's a lot of interesting infrastructure built here. Open ceilings so that we can hear everything around us. Sorry, the amount of bullshit that I can produce is it's limited.
No, we really can't hear anything online. I'm wondering if the technicians in the room can work on the connection.
We can give that answer, but they won't hear that.
We can hear in the room, but the technicians seem to not be able to create that link online.
It is only day one, so, well, it's day one. Day
Day
zero
one.
was.
Day zero was yesterday.
Yes, yes.
Henriette says.
Oh, well, Henriette, I'm a computer scientist. I know how to count arrays.
We're gonna have to go to a visual of dancing and waving arms on the stage soon.
Can sing a song, perhaps. Als de lente komt, dan stuur ik jou tulpen uit Amsterdam. Als de lente komt. dan
Can the
stuur ik
online
jou
participants hear Olaf singing, which is very, very
tulpen
entrancing, I
uit
have to say.
Amsterdam.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Duizend mooie.
No, wait.
That's a bit better.
Is that working?
Ah, we're back.
Oh, we're back. Are we
I-
back? Online people?
I can stop singing now. You missed something online.
There we go. Okay, back to you, Olaf.
Yeah, I don't know where I was, but yeah, partnerships are key to everything. It has been said before, alone a youth runs fast, with an elder slow, but together they go far. It has been said before, and that's partnership for you. And partnership is not only knowledge, or not only money, it's knowledge as well. And as I was saying, the Internet Society tries to make those connections on the knowledge level, but also through our foundation at the funding level. We ourselves work together with the GIGA project of UNICEF, connecting schools. But in Jacksonville, Florida, for instance, we worked with a local bank to connect students to their school. The school put up a mast so that gave children laptops, so that in one of the most poorest areas of Florida, students could get connected. And on bridging that technological policy divide, that is something that is part of our daily work. We try to make connections at the standardization level, so that's at a very global level. We try to provide tool sets so that people can analyze whether their policies will impact the open, global, secure, trustworthy and unfragmented internet. We have the Internet Assessment Toolkit for that. And we try to keep that internet safe. So we will intervene in technical or policy discussions at the local level where we think that the security of the internet is under threat. And these are all wicked problems. Building the internet out to the last billion, the next 1.8 billion people, probably okay, but the last billion people, that is a wicked problem, and we cannot do that alone.
And another catchphrase, we can't do it alone. And so picking up on that and asking who else we can do it with, I'm turning to Cynthia now and asking her where she thinks that the GDC can connect with other important work that's underway. For instance, with South Africa's G20 presidency next year and with the WSIS review that many other speakers have really discussed already as well.
Thank you, Yuping, for this important question. Perhaps before one can ask that question is to really key for us to ask another question, to then say, what do we make of the WSIS Plus 20 review process? From where we are sitting, as South Africa, we look at the WSIS Plus 20 review process as a framework for all stakeholders, based on the WSIS outcome documents to address opportunities and challenges posed by the current digital landscape, including universal connectivity and sustainable digital transformation. Moving forward, it is also important to look at the GDC as a next step for WSIS, right? Where we are sitting, we believe that WSIS has primarily responded to the initial wave of globalization and digitization, and also concentrating on infrastructure and efforts to build the digital divide. While the GDC, we view it as a reflection of the advanced state of the digital ecosystem in addressing its complexities in the era characterized by widespread of digitalization, misinformation, emerging technologies such as AI and blockchain. And we also believe that it is important for us to ask another question as to how GDC reinforce WESUS. For us, this both initiatives, they aim at enhancing ICTs and digital technologies to transform humanity. And we also believe that the GDC builds on the principles of WESUS by incorporating ethical and rights-based approaches to digital transformation. While WESUS focuses on action line, the GDC seeks to centralize sets of principles and commitments agreed upon by all stakeholders. And again, as South Africa, we also believe that really WESUS has laid the groundwork for global ICT discussions, and we also believe that the GDC as a new initiative, it builds upon those principles by focusing on modern challenges, such as the regulation of your platform providers, the regulation of AI and ethics, and the online misinformation. And we also believe that the GDC could also be seen as the next step of WESUS legacy through aligning digital governance with the broader 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Now, now moving to the South African G20 presidency. Ours, as a country, we are informed by the general culture of inclusivity and consultation, which is, again, at the center of the WESUS and the GDC. And this is informed by the values and the spirit of our constitution. With South Africa as a G20 presidency, we seek to reinforce the notion of multi-stakeholder approach. And I want to believe that this is also important for both processes. And we are doing this through enhancing a dialogue and engagement with various states, international organizations, and civil society. And with its presidency, the South African government also intends to place Africa's developmental agenda at the top of the G20 presidency. And we aim to build on the success of the past 3 presidencies led by the Global South. As South Africa, we also believe that this presidency will provide us with an opportunity to advocate for and mobilize support for developing economies of Africa and the Global South, particularly championing the developmental agenda. In conclusion, ours, as South Africa, we believe that the G20 presidency has a pivotal role in advancing the WESUS and the SDG agendas by focusing on the digital inclusion, sustainable development, rights based on governance and global accountability. And we also believe that with our G20 presidency, we can leave a lasting impact on global transformation, particularly for developing nations. And lastly, we believe that with our leadership, we can also fulfill the principles of WESUS, but also position South Africa as a key advocate for more equitable and inclusive digital future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And with that, we end our panel, and we're going to audience interaction and questions and answers for our distinguished panelists. Before we start that, we have another question for you to answer via Slido. And if I could have share screen again. So, having heard everything from our panelists, but also thinking about your own experiences and your own perspectives, in 1 to 2 words, can you tell us how we will know that we are succeeding in delivering impact at the country level? Again, not just talking, but action this time around, reflecting on everything that you've heard about the need to hear these voices and to act on these needs and priorities. So in 1 to 2 words, how will we know that we are succeeding in delivering impact at the country level? Thanks, Sid. Hello. Oh, there we go. 2 responses have been in: digital equality and results. Other suggestions, other reflections. For those just coming in, we're taking an audience survey via Slido. You scan the QR code and you give us 1 to 2 words on how we will know that we are succeeding in delivering impact at the country level. I see some answers that are more than 1 to 2 words. But I appreciate your commitment.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's actually very hard to capture in 1 or 2 words.
Yes,
Because
this is true.
the GDC, the action items or the objectives are in fact the KPIs that we're looking at. And it's not one KPI, it's a bunch of them. And I think that once you see results at each individual objectives, they're not really, not all of them have been phrased as KPIs, but that would be your measure.
This is a good point that Olaf is making, that really the measure is really in capturing the objectives of the GDC itself. Dennis wants to come in a little bit before we open the
Yes,
floor to participants and
thank you.
questions. Go ahead.
I'm looking at the screen and I'm seeing most of the business action lines there. I see e-government development, digital equality, SDG acceleration. And I just want to make this last point that at UNDESA we still think that GDC is a very comprehensive framework moving forward, which will guide us into the WSIS Plus 20. But the WSIS framework is also still valid since 2003 and 2005. We think that existing mechanisms just still work, such as IGF, WSIS Forum, STI Forum, Technology Facilitation Mechanism, etc. One last thing I want to mention is, for example, in 2005 we didn't have AI, social media, or number of things were not there. But the paragraph 72G of the Tunis agenda, where IGF gets its mandate, and I quote, identify emerging issues, bring them to the attention of the relevant bodies and the general public, and where appropriate, make recommendations. So one of the key roles of IGF is to discuss emerging issues, and AI was in the discussions of IGF since 2015. And UNESCO started discussing AI ethics in 2018. So we think that IGF and all this has enormous agenda setting and how issues have normally first pop up in IGF and then produce concrete partnerships and brought us here. So I think that's an important point I just wanted to input here.
And I think that's a point that a lot of us resonates very strongly with a lot of us and really reflects to the importance of the IGF process feeding into these global conversations and in some ways prefiguring the conversation that then happens at the global level, because it was here at IGF that you heard it first. Olaf, go ahead, and then I'm going to turn to the floor.
I use the term norm entrepreneurship. That's exactly what is happening.
Norm entrepreneurship. All right, so we're going to the floor now for reflections. I saw Henriette raised a hand, and then I see Isabel. So Henriette from the Alliance for Progressive Communications.
No. Thanks, Ola. Thanks, everyone. I kind of feel we're still beating around the bush. You know, I want to pick up on what Cynthia was saying about the alignment between GDC and WSIS. But I want to hear more than that. I want to hear that the WSIS Plus 20 outcome will integrate GDC follow-up and implementation with the WSIS. If there's a need to update WSIS action lines to merge them with some of the new emerging issues that the GDC raises, then ask WSIS to do that. Ask the WSIS facilitation agencies to work that. Improve cooperation within the UN system. We know it's not as good as it should be. But I think ultimately, if you want country-based actions, you have to respect countries. And you have to, as the international system, not just dump new agendas on them all the time. I can speak for African countries. I was at the African WSIS Plus 20 PrepCom. They are implementing those WSIS action lines. They're doing their best. It's an imperfect, uneven process. They're now concerned about also integrating GDC. make it easy for them, merge these processes. I think anything beyond that is serving our international intergovernmental bureaucracy rather than serving what we're trying to achieve at member state level.
Thank you, Henriette. Turning over to Isabel from the Office of the Tech Envoy. And then after that, we have Nena online and then a colleague here. Isabel, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and I'm devastated to go after Henriette. I'm Isabel de Sola from the Office of the Tech Envoy, and I just wanted to say that I think this is such a good question on the screen, is how do we know that we're succeeding? From the Office of the Tech Envoy, I really want to take this question back and see how we could connect some of our work on implementation to KPIs. And I couldn't get my camera to work, but I would like to add one to the screen, which is two actually, data governance, so 2 words, Yuping. I think that we have an opportunity in the GDC to advance some pretty groundbreaking principles for international data governance. And the task is probably one of the most complex and most important of the GDC that will require a multi-stakeholder approach. So for the IGF in its role as an ideation center, as a place for exchange, I really hope that the IGF will contribute to that process, which is just about to kick off in Geneva in January. And a second 2 or 3 words is about diversity of content. And that relates to the WSIS agenda. So this is something that we've been working on for 20 years, but where I've recently learned there could be real potential for partnerships with the private sector. 80% of content online 20 years after the WSIS is still just in 7 languages, and 50% of that content is in English. And now we have maybe some technical tools that could provide shortcuts to translating loads of content online. Those technical tools are in the hands of a certain sector, also present here at the IGF, and they're doing their part. I understand Google is taking 110 new languages into its AI-powered translation model. But here's a place I think where the WSIS and the GDC could dig deeper together and say, all right, the progress we've made with the WSIS on languages is this, and in the GDC we call on tech companies to support us in this, that, and the other in 9 areas. And perhaps that's a nice low-hanging fruit for the 2 frameworks to work together and deliver, as this question suggests, results. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. And we go to Nena online, and then we'll come over here to our colleague here. Nena?
Thank you. I hope you can hear me very well.
Very quietly, Nena. Is it okay if you speak a little bit more loudly?
Can you hear me?
Yes, but not a little faint. But go ahead, Nena.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of sound issues. I just wanted to come back on the divides and the intersectionality of the divides. At this stage, we're not just talking about digital divides, that is the infrastructural part of it alone, but I think we should pay close attention to the digital policy divides, digital gender divides, digital rural and urban divides, digital age divide. So that's just what I want to pitch in here, and maybe our panelists, our resource people can zero in on this, that after 20 years in IGF, speaking about digital divides alone is not enough, but I think we should all, as a global digital community, be aware that divides are intersectional and our response to them must be intersectional. And I think that it is important to put this here because we're talking about digital cooperation and most of our UN family members are here, so that we don't just run with our own individual mandates at the expense of the mandate of other agencies, but we should have that collaboration ahead as a focus, because our divides are intersectional and our response to them should also be. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Nena. And let me reassure you that I think the collaboration between UN agencies, as you can see from the presence on the stage, has been strong and continues to be growing as well. So over here to colleague in the room.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your good presentations, though we had these hiccups of the internet. Anyway, hoping that because it's IGF forum that tomorrow everything will be better than this. I'm Julia Fusha. I come from Kenya. We mainly work in the northern part of Kenya called Marsabit. It's a very dry place, and the place is remote. We do have a school, for example, called Tigo School, which you know, not only internet, we do not even have electricity in the first place. So I was wondering, Rob said he's going to work with the country, mainly for the civil servants. In Marsabit, most of the people are pastoralists, and they are mainly affected by drought. Like we had drought for the last 4 years. It only rained end of last year and early this year. I tend to agree with what Mr. Off had said, that let's really look at the local part of it, other than, you know, the whole nation. Because if you look at like the civil servants who come from Marsabit or from the marginalized places, they are very few. And we really need this taken down to the students, you know, to the ground local levels. So kindly, I would also request if you are able to work with us who are the CSOs, like the local NGOs who deal directly with the people in the grassroots. I think that can touch more people other than just going to the towns. Thank you.
Gitanjali has a response to that, and I think that is exactly a reminder of the perspectives and the people that we need to reach if we truly want to be impactful. Gitanjali,
we have one more person in the queue.
Maybe Gitanjali first, and then we can
think
take.
he's been waiting.
Oh,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alex Moura. I am originally from Brazil. I work here in Saudi Arabia in the Caus University, and I've been working on the research and education and support for scientific research for more than 25 years now. And I, from all the perspectives I heard here today, I'd like to add on the last commentary from our colleague here, that I miss a lot of the integration or collaboration involving organizations that are working on those in this area of research and education. For instance, in each country, there is some sort of research and education organization working to connect schools, universities, all sorts of educational, let's say, facility. And those facilities could be, I think, on my view, education is the main thing that could change people's lives instead of only giving the access to internet. Because if you give them the communication capabilities, but along with that, if you give access to good information and relevant, meaningful material that they can improve their own lives and do new things for themselves, you can empower communities, remote locations, people there is disconnected, so a lot of good things can come from that. So I think all efforts should always try to look involving the local people who works on research and education. And one good channel is the research and education networks. In each country you have a lot of people working to do the same thing you are talking here. They are striving to bring fiber across Amazon River. They are building connections to satellites, and that's not only for scientific purposes. It's also to connect schools and make people have access. So if you join efforts with those people and they have global coverage, I am also on the leadership of the GNA, Global Network Advancement, and this group is working to integrate the whole backbone of all NRENs in the whole world to work as an integrated system that every scientist, educator in the world can have access to make things better for science and education in every country. So this, I think, is important to see how we can leverage that capacity. They are very hardworking people. They work on trust. They collaborate, and they do a lot of incredible things. So you could check out the website In the Field, where they publish a lot of things they do, and the accomplishments are there. So if you join efforts with those kind of organizations, I think it would be very helpful.
And again, I think that's a good reminder that we should be looking to where there are existing efforts and really these partnerships with local bodies and local organizations that are already doing this good work. So thank you for that and that perspective on who we really need to be focusing on and at the local level as well. So I saw that Gitanjali and Rob both wanted to come back in on what they've heard so far. And I will also open it up to the other panelists as well. So Gitanjali first and Rob.
So, Yuping, you know, this discussion really takes me back to 2006 when I was working with UNDP and UNESCO at the grassroots level. And I think Olaf, Annette, Rob, you'll really remember, you know, how together as a passionate community, the open source movement started after WSIS. You know, it was so passionate on the ground. The indigenous bringing indigenous languages and cultures to the digital world. The community radio stations. I mean, I don't know if any of you were involved in that movement, but in 2006, Annette, you'll remember, you know, when we had started empowering the local villages to run their own community radio stations and to be empowered, you know. So really, this whole digital ICT movement dates back to a lot of achievements, you know. So we are talking about AI, new technologies right now, but think about all grassroots level work that we have all done together to bring it to this level. You know, reminds me of the post offices in India which were converted into telecenters, where the postman had the role of being trained as a telecenter manager to provide information and e-governance services to the villages. So, you know, these are really rapid strides that we've made because of the hard work of the entire community. Digital skilling, another revolution. You were talking about education. Distance learning programs and distance learning education was revolutionary for women and girls in South Asia. No? So just want to also remind you that as Anirudh said, people have been working since 2000, you know, on the ground to make all of this possible. And this is why today we are talking about AI and new technologies and all of that, because a lot of work has gone into it.
We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask the panelists to really be very short in their responses and to also ask if anyone online or in the room has any very quick, literally 2 sentences, comments or responses. So very quickly to the panelists, 2 sentences each.
Oh, now, what? Okay.
Everyone gets 2 sentences.
I just wanted to respond quickly to the 2 comments made here that are extremely valid in terms of looking at rural areas, across the country, local, and the education system. You know, what I'm talking about, I kind of left at macro level, but in Kenya, in fact, we are now working on local district digital readiness assessments because we know that the disparities are out there. The education system in Africa, we have 13 countries where we've been innovation offices into local universities because we also know that's the source of a lot of the digital skilling and the kind of the pipeline of the future. And yes, and then we have lots of things around the world as well on extension to local spaces, like Bangladesh has something in the order of 9,000 local digital services centers and things like that. So just to say, acknowledge excellent points, and there's a lot going on.
There was a lot more than 2 sentences. Olaf, very quickly, 2 sentences.
2 points.
2 points.
First, Henriette, I think, made a good point. Don't invent too many processes. Build on what you have. We have the IGF. It's solid. We need to tweak it. We need to grow and evolve it, but build on it. Second point, academic networks and RANs have been part of the technical community since the dawn of the internet. They have always been on the edge of education and brought capacities to their localities. And they are one of those very important partners where you're doing things locally. Involve your NRAN. I'm so on it.
Great 2 points. Cynthia?
Thank you. I think for me, I just want to say, Andret, I agree with you. We don't need to start the new processes. We're coming from the region that is we really want to see action, and we believe that the existing processes, the IGF and the WSIS Forum, has worked and they will continue to work. However, we believe that there's a need to look at those gaps and improve on them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other comments in the room? I see none, and we really end on Cynthia's very strong points on that. Thank you so much for being with us, everyone online and everybody in the room. Oh, wait, Dennis?
Yeah,
Dennis has the last 2 words.
You think, yeah, I just want to say the same thing. This process or IGF is not perfect, but we should continue to fix it. I think you already said that.
Fighting words from everybody here in the room. Thank you so much for your patience with the technical difficulties. Thank you to those online, and thank you to everyone here for a great conversation.
Thank you.